Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the F Show in partnership with the Tropics Business Summit. And the Tropics Business Summit is in its fourth edition, and they're really looking, obviously, at business in Africa and in the diaspora, but the focus is on Africa. And so we welcome you all, wonderful film festivals based in the UK with the focus on Africa. Thank you for being with us today. I'd like to start off probably, if I may, I'm going to come to you, Liz, just in terms of, how are you, dear? In terms of AIM, because you're right in the middle of all this excitement right now, I think, the African Motion Film Festival.
We are. I'm still new to the organization, so it's all quite chaotic for me, but I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Shall we show a link, maybe a trailer of AIM, and then you can talk to us about the festival and what your focus was? Okay, so Justine, if we have the trailer, may we see it, please? When did you join, Liz? How long has it been?
It's just been a few months, but due to COVID, as everybody else knows, this sea thing is affecting us in all different ways. So there's been a few delays, but I'm embracing the challenge.
Okay, let's have a look.
Sorry.
Okay. Somewhere there. I think that COVID has really affected people. And, our previous session was talking particularly around COVID and what that has meant for everybody just to pivot, because you've got to think about, I mean, today is wonderful that we're all talking to each other. And yeah, is that it? Sorry, Justine, I don't know what your technical thing's doing to you today, but there we go. Yay.
Was it a long journey?
Wow, that is beautiful. Wow, that is really beautiful. That makes me very excited, Liz. I want to be back there. Talk to us about your festival.
Oh, definitely. It wouldn't have been possible without my amazing team. Especially my co-pilot, Carmen, as a co-director. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to pull together in this time, especially with the challenges of showing stuff online. We've been faced with some new kind of questions, and especially around film rights and so on. So very, very grateful for what we've been able to achieve. I think it's over 70 features now, I think, Carmen, and quite a number of shorts and animations. So yeah. Also, we're very proud that we're still able to provide the sliding scale ticketing, so people can pay what they can afford. And we've got very decently priced passes as well. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. So Carmen, you've also been very involved in this festival and putting together, helping with the program. You do a lot of outreach and masterclasses, workshops. Are those still going to happen?
Yeah, they are. And I think perhaps maybe more so than previous years, because I guess one of the upsides, there are very few of doing things online, and the kind of the things that are happening with the Big C is that people can come, we can get people in over Zoom from across the world without having the kind of the money, the kind of budgetary restraints of flying people into Scotland, which is what we've had to do in previous years. So we've actually got a whole strand, an industry strand. I think we've got 2 masterclasses, more Q&As than we usually would have had with filmmakers. Industry, like the panel discussions. We've collaborated with Film Africa on a panel discussion with 2 films and the directors of 2 films that we're both showing in our program. So yeah, in that way, it's been incredible, because in previous years, perhaps AIM has been more kind of focused on a general audience, film consumer audience, whereas now we're kind of able to reach those industry professionals and people that are interested in kind of the craft of filmmaking as well in Scotland, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that must be. And then have you found that the numbers have increased? Are you having more people involved and interested?
From an audience perspective? Or
Yes, audience.
Yeah, I mean, we launched our program last week or the week before last, so we're kind of just getting a sense. I think people are just kind of getting used to navigating the new landscape of the website and understanding how the ticketing structures work. I think everybody's so kind of overwhelmed with everything online that everything works in a slightly different way. But like Liz says, we've got a really amazing kind of ticketing structure, and it's very kind of, I think it's incredibly like value for money in terms of you get a festival pass for 15 or 20 pounds and you can get access to the whole festival. So people are starting to buy to get them. So I think hopefully get nearer the start of the festival at the end of October, people will really be kind of on board with us, and yeah, should be good.
Wow, well done, congratulations. And also you've extended it, so it's a whole month.
Yes, I know. We're a little bit mad, I think, but yeah, we just thought the model of it kind of all being crammed into 10 days like it would do in a physical festival just wouldn't work with online. So yeah, we've moved it so there's only a couple of events each day that happen in the evenings around people going to work and things, and then obviously more matinee stuff on the weekends. But yeah, hopefully it's going to mean that people get to see all of them, because what we didn't want to happen is it all to kind of happen and people to miss these films, because they kind of deserve time for people to be able to engage with them.
So Liz, I mean, this, as you say, was difficult, was challenging, but also hugely exciting.
It has been, especially having used to visa restrictions. It's nice to be able to support the audience. As passionate as I am to support independent cinemas like the venues themselves, we recognize that most of our audience are from Black and ethnic minority audiences. So it's been a blessing in a way to put everything online, even with all the challenges that have come with it. Yeah.
So Sheila, I'm coming to you. If you could please introduce your festival, yourself, the work that you do. I think we have a link for you though.
We do as well.
Let's try and see if Justine is able to get your link up.
Sure.
And then we'll talk through. Yay, looks like we have. Wow. Well done. Wow.
Thank you. So that's our trailer. It's 1 minute long, so we could get it into Instagram and all the different social media without having to chop it up. So we have actually gone for a blended model this year for Film Africa. Rather than just doing everything online, we spoke to some of our venues. We've got long-standing relationships with all of our venue partners. And so we decided to do half of our program online and half of it in the venues. They're all going to be socially distanced screenings. It's going to be very different because we won't have any visiting filmmakers in person. We'll only have one physical live Q&A, which is going to be interesting, actually, with the two directors of I Am Samuel and Kenyan Christian Queer, who are going to then feature in this joint panel discussion that we're doing with Africa in Motion. So for us, it's been a journey just trying to find the right model for Film Africa and for London audiences, whilst also trying to reach out to a wider UK audience. And rather than sort of streaming the films on our own platform, we've partnered with the BFI player. So the films will be on their subscription service for the 10 days of the festival. And so it's a different model, but it really works for us. And I think, you know, moving forward, one big lesson for us will be to always have a kind of online offering as well as the physical offering, because there's no denying that the kind of magic that happens when, you know, festivals happen in person is just irreplaceable, right? You get to meet the filmmakers, you get to ask them questions directly as an audience. If you're another filmmaker, one of the things that we as festivals perhaps don't document enough is how many collaborations stem from people meeting at festivals. Like, festivals are really like creative hubs where new projects are conceived and then materialized. So obviously that sort of side of the festival experience is going to be missed because you really can't replicate that online. But nevertheless, I think, you know, it's been really the silver lining in this big cloud of the pandemic has been to actually engage with the potential of online, you know, online and engaging audiences online. So yeah, so for us, it's been a learning curve, but a positive one. And I'm really excited, even though I know it's going to be a very strange year in a way.
But I think what you say, which is so important, is to document that. And even this new normal, whatever we're calling it, is definitely to see what happens. How many people will come out? How many people will engage? And I'm really curious to see the blended kind of proposal and project. Fantastic, well done, Sheila. So Estrella, let's come to you. Do you have a link that you want to share with us on your festival?
Hi everyone, I don't have a link. Last year in the Cambridge African Film Festival, we decided that we were going to move actually towards a collaborative format, because in the past editions, we had started to establish connections with local festivals such as the Festival of Ideas, and also last year as well with another festival in Cambridge, which is called Watersprite, a student film festival. So we also think that festivals are, as Sheila was saying, crucial creative hubs, but also for filmmakers that are starting to find a place in what is a very hierarchical, at the end of the day, film industry. So we always at festivals try to bring, of course, the best contemporary titles to Cambridge, which again, it's also a particular local place that we need to take into account, but we also want to give visibility to the work of upcoming filmmakers. So screening, for example, debut feature-length films, or having awards for short films and so on. So in that sense, last year we said, okay, most of us are not based in Cambridge anymore. It's a festival that started in 2002, run voluntarily by students, and it's kept the format of being run voluntarily, but obviously many people have already left, and it's been challenging to, again, keep the continuity up, because as much as festivals are so important for the film industry. At the same time, it's really challenging for festivals to be sustainable. So I think we also need to acknowledge this. So funnily enough, last year we were saying, okay, from now on, we are just going to become a board, so an advisory board, where we can offer this curatorial expertise on bringing filmmakers, again, not because we are experts on African cinema. I mean, I have studied, for example, African cinema now. I teach it at SOAS University, but it's precisely because we have those connections that Sheila was talking about that happen in person through film festivals, right? So we said we are going to enjoy this networking that happened through the space of the festival and advise other festivals to screen these titles so that African films are seen as well beyond the label of Africa, which we found really interesting as a transition. So this year, we didn't know if there was going to be an opportunity for a collaboration because of COVID-19. And suddenly there was this brilliant idea by all of you colleagues to put together this We Are Tano. And I think that curating this has been crucial in thinking back about CAF, the Cambridge African Film Festival, and what it meant or means for the city of Cambridge. Because again, as we were curating titles, I was watching again the other day as I opened my eyes, and I remember that The Singer came to Cambridge, how much of a party that was for the youth in Cambridge. And it's been great to see that festivals are so necessary, not just for filmmakers, but also for audiences who really enjoy to get to see other kinds of things. So yes, We Are Tano is the trailer that we would be able to show, because this is our first collaboration with other film festivals.
So do we have that trailer can we see that?
No, we
We Are
don't. We
Tano?
don't actually have a trailer for We Are Tano. We didn't manage to make that happen. But as Estrella said, I would just second what she said in terms of like us festivals, as the UK African Film Festivals coming together this year because of COVID. Again, you know, we had this opportunity to do something online, and it just seemed like a perfect time to reflect back on the last decade and try and showcase, you know, some of the most loved titles by our audiences to wider audiences. So yes, I see that with sharing the screen for We Are Tano. So we're 6 films down. We've got 4 to go. It is geo-blocked to the UK, so only audiences in the UK are able to watch these films. But if anyone listening is in the UK, then we'd urge them to go on to We Are Tano, which is actually hosted on the Africa in Motion website.
Well, thank you. I know I tried to get online and then Justine told me it was geo-blocked. But that's okay. I think it's just the fact that it's going out there, and as you say, from the past decade, and there are a few South African films there. So that's got me really excited, of course. And I think the Battle for Algiers, which is something that, you know, stays in one's mind forever. I'm much older than all of you. I could be your mums, but I remember being your age and thinking, oh my goodness, how this affected me. So Fadil, we're coming to you right now. I know you're cold out there in Cardiff. Welcome.
It's freezing. It's freezing. Thank you very much.
Welcome, my dear. Tell us about the work that you do.
I am the director for Wales African Film Festival. I'm called Watch Africa, and the festival has been running for the last 7 years, having started in 2013. And so it's been a whirlwind of a journey, to say the least, because I moved to, the festival started basically, if I give a little background, in 2013, having volunteered actually with Film Africa when I was in London briefly. So when I moved to Wales and I moved for work, and I was slightly lost, slightly bored. I was looking for things to do, and there was hardly anything. Obviously, my passion for film, my passion for arts and culture in general, drove me basically to say, okay, you know, if you don't have something, you have to create something for yourself. It's almost a form of self-entertainment in a way. And yeah, we started off with screening African films in small venues, in lecture halls, community halls. And that was probably the first 2 years. And in the meantime, we were trying to knock into independent cinemas. And at that time, there was no appetite to some extent because one, they've never, I guess a lot of the venues, they've never screened African films before. And so they kind of assumed that there's no appetite for these kind of films. But obviously with our audiences growing in these community halls, community cinema venues, they saw there's an appetite. They saw there are many people there, whether they're students, the African diaspora, or the general public in general, wanting to see these films. And I think you're looking at roughly between 2015 up to now, obviously, we've been working with many venues across Wales. So we actually went from being just based in Cardiff to touring across Wales. And I know African Motion are doing a whole month program, but we've been doing that for the last few years because of traveling from one place to another. So we went to places like Aberystwyth, in Swansea, Bangor, Wrexham, and some rural places called Tawyn and Machynlleth. So these are kind of rural villages within Wales as well. So we're trying to kind of take African films to as many audiences as possible. But yeah, it's been going well.
Thank you. You know, for me sitting in South Africa, I feel overwhelmed just thinking that this is what you're doing. Like you guys are taking it out there and you presenting it to other audiences, and probably what all filmmakers want, because we want our films to be seen everywhere. And festivals are definitely the way to go. And I think, you know, with you guys are calling it the big C, with COVID, there was almost a sense like, well, now we've all become, you know, quite complacent and we'll sit in our little rooms and we won't need to go out. And what is that? What does that mean? And I'm sure that you felt, Liz, I'm coming more to you. I'm sure that you felt that people were actually hungry for interaction, hungry for content, hungry to, even though we're in this matrix, even though it's this kind of Zoom platform and, you know, we can't touch each other and feel, but we are hungry for content that resonates with us. How have you guys felt that?
It's definitely resonated with us. Over the summer, we still did a few screenings in our Aim at Home program, and the engagement was really good. Just before I came up to Glasgow, there was a dine and view screening where people cooked at home and then shared pictures of what they cooked and then they ate it while they were watching the film. So, you know, engagement has been really great, including our International Day of the Girl program, for example, where 3 writers came to speak about their craft, and I'm still getting messages about the fact that that event went on. So I think people are hungry. They are hungry for a variety of things. You know, well, I wouldn't like to call it competing, but in a way we are with Netflix and other big platforms. So we do have to offer something that's not already there. But we're enjoying the journey, I'll say, or finding the joy in it, rather. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we've got to find the joy in it, and we've got to make it work. So I actually watched a little bit of the Girl Child presentation that you had and the storytelling around that, which I think is so important. Carmen, in terms of children and the collaboration with young people, how has that been? Has AIM managed to go out there and get kiddies involved?
Yeah, I mean, Liz, the Girl Child, I'll take no credit for any of that. Sure, that was all Liz's wonderful thing. But I think, yeah, I think it's just finding a way to do it. And obviously we're kind of navigating that space. But I think that certainly parents and children are looking for those ways of connection. And I think online offers a kind of a unique space for doing that as well, that perhaps in person didn't do. But I mean, African Motion has always had that place in its program for children. We've always had some sort of interactive element, storytelling, like Mara, who did the storytelling, wonderful Mara, who did the storytelling for International Day of the Girl Child. She's always involved in some way in the festival. This year we've got an AfriKids animated program of shorts for kids, and Mara is going to be doing another storytelling session for that as well. But yeah, it's just it's interesting to try and find ways of connecting. But yeah, again, it's an important audience to focus on, I think, in these things. It often gets missed out at kind of mainstream film festivals, I guess, as well, because it's seen as this kind of adult thing and quite a kind of exclusive event. So it's, yeah, and then obviously everybody has kids, and kids look for these kind of cultural connections in films as well. And it's an amazing thing for families to share the experience of watching these films together. So yeah, hopefully we'll find ways to engage people during the actual festival in October and November.
Yeah. So Sheila, how has the collaboration been with Tano in particular? I know you're saying it's on the AIM platform. How have your audiences accessed it? Do you engage with them? What has that been like?
It was actually just a random idea I came up with to begin with. And we wanted to come together because every year when we used to host the festivals physically, we would share films and filmmakers so that we would create sort of UK-wide tours for certain titles that we all agreed with, essentially, because we're all independent festivals that have different curatorial approaches, but there's obviously overlap in terms of some of the titles. So this year we were just, I wanted us to work together as in previous years, but obviously having the challenge of doing things online, we needed to find something to do together that could be feasible. And I just thought a sort of retrospective of the last decade of African cinema would be a great thing to do. And one of the interesting things was we started with this really long list. And one of the interesting and very satisfying things to see was that a lot of the titles that we had screened back in the day that didn't have distribution at the time, or maybe they did but didn't really get a long theatrical run, some of them were now on Netflix, on the BFI player, on Amazon Prime. So that was really like encouraging to see, because actually as this small 5 festivals, we've really contributed to mainstreaming African cinema in the UK. I really think it's been a lot to do with our own work in bringing African cinema to like these UK audiences. And, this is not to blow our own trumpet, but it's really simply to recognize that actually our festivals have played a role in that. I think there's also been a shift in terms of like what's cool and what's trending. And there's a huge appetite for African culture and the arts generally now, whether, it be through Afrobeats and, all of the musical collaborations that are happening, through literature, the likes of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie are now like world-renowned. Bernardine Evaristo, who won the Man Booker Prize, she's been someone who we've been programming for years at Africa Writes, which is our sister festival for contemporary African writing. So one of the things I just want us to recognize is that, we have contributed to mainstreaming African cinema, and the We Are Tano collaboration just made it very clear that actually out of all of these long titles, there are still a few that are almost inaccessible in the UK, and those were the ones that we wanted to shine a light on.
Oh, well done. And it's not about blowing your trumpet, or maybe it is about definitely blowing your trumpet. You need people to know, and that is fantastic. So Estrella, I'm just checking. I think you focused, if I'm correct, around the student population. So are young people interested? Do you feel there's a convergence in terms of what young people in the UK maybe and kids in kind of, I'm saying Pan-Africa because it's not just one country, but do they have connections, collaborations?
Yeah, very, very good question. So, I mean, I was a director of the Cambridge African Film Festival in 2014, and I was until 2016 before I started my PhD. And well, the thing is that Cambridge is a city very much based around the University of Cambridge, right? So there's certain elitism in relation to that, but at the same time, there is a great opportunity to involve the student community as audiences in the festivals, but also as volunteers. Because again, when students became volunteers, they would become as well ambassadors of the festival. And what this meant as well was that the Cambridge African Film Festival didn't just happen in the Arts Picture House, because we had this partnership with the Cambridge Film Festival, again, already as a gateway toward mainstreaming African cinema, but also we would host screenings in the Trinity College, which was also a partner, or other different colleges in Cambridge, where it's even it's even difficult to access those lecture theaters. So there was that double boundary of the difficulty of accessing African cinema and the difficulty of accessing a lecture theater in the University of Cambridge. So it was really interesting, especially to me, because I've been based in London for the past 10 years. And obviously I'm not from here, I'm originally from Spain, and Cambridge has a not very diverse community, but also is because that's the community that is given visibility. So true, the student community was our starting point, but it was very important to move beyond that and to move beyond the student community in the University of Cambridge. So just to put an example, I don't want to take too much time from my colleagues, but we also wanted to reach out to a large community of Nigerian students that were based in the other university in Cambridge, which is the Anglia Ruskin University. So yeah, again, volunteers came and we hosted a really cool screening with Destiny Ekaraga and a Q&A with her. It was Gone Too Far. Again, someone who is now, well, she's basically moved to television more. So yeah, she's much more mainstream at the moment, but back then it was like her, I don't know, one of her first films. And it was so great to screen this film in Cambridge and have her in the Q&A, because her niece was studying in the university over there. And I remember that there were like at least 50 people out of 80 in the audience were like young Nigerian students who were in Cambridge for the first time and who had not seen anything in Cambridge where they were welcome or where they were the target audience. So I think this was really great. And again, we moved as well. We had a dine and view screening where we were watching an Ethiopian film while we were also eating Ethiopian food in an area of Cambridge that is very mixed. And again, that is not often given a space of celebration of culture in mainstream Cambridge or in central Cambridge. So those are the different ways in which we were trying to engage with that range of audiences. And I want to make a last point. I think that Sheila was highlighting, again, like how we have somehow contributed to mainstream African cinema, but I also want to say that this has very much been thanks to the collaborative approach. And I think this is something quite unique in the UK, that we all managed to have our own distinct approaches that talk to the audiences in our localities, but there was always this sense of collaboration where we don't only create a tour. I think that we create as well, Sheila, a circuit for these filmmakers to say, okay, let's start here. And through this coverage of this newspaper here and there, then all of a sudden there's that legitimization to all these titles. And I think that's something really important to highlight about this collaborative aspect of the festivals.
Wow. I was going to ask you though, that you are from Spain, and why did you have an interest in African cinema?
I started as a documentary filmmaker. I'm based in Sevilla and we are very close to Africa, but the misrepresentation of Africa was huge. And I was studying film back in 2005. It's a long story, but I'll put it short. I'm happy about misrepresentations of Africa and other cultures in the media. Ended up doing a documentary about migration. Most people in my documentary were from Senegal, screened it over Senegal, worked over there as a journalist. And then it took me to SOAS, where I studied African film, and yeah, fascinating. And I did it with Lindiwe Dovey, who was the founder of the Cambridge African Film Festival and co-founder as well of Film Africa back then in 2011. So when I was a student, I volunteered for Film Africa, and yeah, and I feel very close to that. That's where I discovered one of my favorite filmmakers, Alain Gomis. So I'm very pleased to see Tay in our We Are Tano festival. So yeah, that's a bit of the short story.
Thank you. So Fadil, I'm curious, which heritage, which country does your family come from, or you, or how did you end up where you are? And you said that you had volunteered at the festival in London, and that's really made you look, you know, what can you do back where you are currently? So I know it's a loaded question, but if you can answer some of it.
No problem, Fidos. I'm from Tanzania, so I'm come from Bongoland, as we call it. Born and bred in Tanzania. I've been in the UK for, gosh, it's too many years to remember. It's 20 plus, but you know, it's been enjoyable. I moved here, early 2000s, I believe. It was, my mom came to study, so she was lucky to be one of those students who were able to access scholarships that allowed her to bring our family over. So I came with my mom and my two brothers. We moved to Essex, of all places, so a bit of an Essex boy, you might say, with Essex blood. I've been in, so moved to Essex. I lived in Bristol for a long time as well, following Essex for my studies. So I went to university there, spent a good 7-8 years there, worked, moved to London for a bit, and obviously Cardiff now. And yeah, so it's kind of been a whole journey altogether, to be honest, and you kind of get to see the UK as a whole and the devolved countries as well, especially me being based in Cardiff, and understanding of the different parts of the UK. So what was the latter question that you asked?
Well, I'm going to shift it actually. So did you work with the Zanzibar International Film Festival at any time with ZIF?
No, actually not. Actually, funny enough, I've never actually been involved with ZIF at all until maybe a couple of years ago, when I attended the festival. And last year I was in ZIF as well, which obviously for those you were producing the festival. And yeah, but prior to that, there has been very little engagement. I mean, my background is on social sciences and human rights. So I got into film really by accident, if you might say. Even though I've got passion for film, I love films, especially African films. But I think one area that I can point out where my interest probably heightened in many ways was during my time with Film Africa. And I learned a lot during my time there. Picked up a few things, and I guess to some extent when I moved to Cardiff, I was like, okay, I have little experience of seeing how this thing is run, because my role was just a volunteer, so you don't get to see the nitty-gritty bits. But it was enough to give me a flavor. It was enough to tell me this is doable and there's appetite and there's a need, as Estrella said, to really challenge those narratives that people have. And Wales needed that. And going back to what Sheila said, we need to blow our trumpet, because we have achieved a lot. We have done a lot. A good example here, we do Film Hub Wales tend to give figures of films that have been screened across Wales. And it was zero, years ago. African films had no presence whatsoever. And right now we're looking at 3-4% of the films that are being screened across Wales being from the African continent or associated with Africa. And that is something to be proud of and to certainly celebrate.
Absolutely. I feel like that. I look at all of you young people and think, wow, how wonderful that you can collaborate, that you can work together, that it's not about, a lot of the time is really about people fighting for space. Whereas you are creating support, creating space, creating partnerships. It almost gives me goosebumps as I say that. And it's just wonderful. It really does. It's wonderful that you do it that way. So in our closing remarks, I'll give each of you an opportunity to tell me how, because I said this is linked to Tropics Business Summit and the idea around business in the sector that we work in. Can you just in some way tell me how you see that, whether you do or don't, but where would the business side come in? And I know that you talk about distribution and you talk about mainstreaming, but the concerns have always been around maybe co-production, production budgets that are never enough. People need to travel, all of this, that's really a challenge when coming together around film as an industry and film as a business, and not just the nice to have. It's wonderful to have the cultural exchange, but at the end of the day, people need to eat. The filmmaker needs money. So Liz, I'm going to start with you. Where do you see the business side of it?
Oh, that's such a big question, Firdaus. But first I want to say For me, I'm compassion-led, and I'm finding that I mean, it's been good to have a lot of support, but at the same time, I'm in the position of going from never having led an organization to leading one in a year of this C thing. I don't even want to say the name of it. So I think there needs to be compassion for this kind of notion and pressure of foreseeing the unforeseeable. So there's a lot of pressure to fix things which you don't even know are going to be a problem yet. So in terms of the business side of things, definitely perhaps more to come. I know it's already started, but maybe more to come also from the government. I know recently there's been a bit of a controversy about an organization getting way more money than people think they deserved. I don't want to say the name, but it's been trending on social media for the last couple of days now. So there's kind of an unfair balance in terms of what funds are given out to keep organizations afloat. And to be fair, the arts sector keeps us sane many times. So it doesn't make sense that there isn't enough funding towards that sector. In terms of organizations themselves, definitely a hybrid system is looking like the future, at least in the near future. Similar to what Sheila was talking about, is finding ways to collaborate with venues in a way that makes sense for your audience. At the end of the day, our audiences are affected more by this pandemic, so we do have to be sensitive to that. And then at the same time, keeping in mind that people can't afford, let's say, £9 for a ticket. That's the same as a subscription to Netflix. So they're not seeing like that's a fair kind of balance. But I think basically the short answer is a hybrid situation, which has already been going on. But also in terms of production, it's a good thing that you bring up there. I've been thinking very hard about how, I'm from Kenya myself, and finding ways of kind of bridging this. It's not really a gap, but I think it needs to be strengthened, this bridge between here and the African continent in general. But maybe the best way to go forward is kind of focusing on specific spaces that you're aware of, similar to what Estrella was saying. You know, she's familiar with Senegal. I'm familiar with Kenya. Maybe that's where to start with. But that's how I'm approaching it on a personal level. I don't want to take too much space.
Thank you, Liz. What about you, Sheila?
So I would just say that at the end of the day, at Film Africa, and I think the rest of the festivals are the same, we're audience festivals, right? So the business of film comes into our ecosystem, but we are not an integral part of, you know, the kind of the business of film as such. But because we focus on exhibition and we do build audiences, and we help to demystify these myths that actually, you know, there's no audiences for African cinema, or there's no audience for, you know, non-white, non-Western content. We contribute to that shift. And I think essentially what needs to happen is just literally a shift in mentality. I mean, by 2051, 1 in 5 people in the UK are going to be from a non-white, from a minority ethnic background. That's just the reality we're living in. If you're looking at it from a market perspective, you better become diverse. You better become inclusive. That's just how the world is moving. If not, you're going to miss out. So for me, it's just basically bringing that message home, really emphasizing that actually audiences want diversity. They want a mirror to see themselves reflected on screen, and they also want a window out to the world. They want to see and experience other people's point of view. They want to feel connected to the rest of humanity. I mean, that's just our human nature. So that's what I would say as an audience-led festival, really.
Which is very, very important. And I think that's where the currency is. You know, currency doesn't have to be in dollars and pounds. That you can't pay for. That shift, you cannot put a value to it in terms of hard cash. But it's much more than that. So absolutely, I agree with your comment. Sorry, Sheila, I was just going to say, let's go to
But just
Carmen.
yeah, sorry, but just
Yeah.
to say that what I'm trying to say is that it does translate into profit.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's kind of what I'm saying, that, you know, there's this myth that actually, you know, and I think, you know, if we just use the example of Black Panther, like, you know, the blockbuster that it was, like, you know, it just completely demystified the myth that Black audiences and non-white audiences want part with their money to see a film that they're keen to see. So I think it's just really, you know, embracing the fact that actually, if you want to continue to be successful, you need to be inclusive and show diversity. And I mean, even the Oscars are now doing it. You know, it's how it's the direction we're moving into. And I think it's just it would be yeah, like very short-sighted of different companies not to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. Carmen?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, but I just like to add to that a kind of combination of what both Liz and Sheila were saying, is I think my worry is I think that a lot of organizations and kind of bigger festivals are starting to realize that. And they're reaping the benefits without the filmmakers seeing the benefits of that. I think a lot of film festivals in the UK, for example, don't pay screening fees to filmmakers, especially if they're quite mainstream and big ones, because I think they see themselves as kind of giving filmmakers a privilege of being screened there, and they don't see them having to pay a screening fee. So in terms of the business of it, and that's why I kind of, to go back to what Liz was saying, I think we're in a really difficult position, especially in the UK, but kind of maybe across the world. And we're seeing how kind of precarious the art sector is, especially like in the UK, it's kind of at the front and center of the conversation that's happening now, with governments asking people in the arts to retrain and kind of really undervaluing the whole sector. And I mean, it's the sector that people have looked to and have like gone to during this time and gotten so much out of. So I think it's like, it's looking forward, we don't know where we're going to be as a festival. We don't know if our funding is going to be the same. And obviously, you know, us five, we kind of we really see the value in these films. And I think during the programming process, we obviously pay screening fees for all of our films, but it never feels like enough for me to, you know, we're very small in terms of the budgets that we have available. So I think, yeah, there needs to be, with the kind of the growing appreciation of African cinema, it also needs to coincide with filmmakers being paid what they're owed for making these films. Because I think that, you know, exposure alone and kind of being mainstream doesn't pay people's bills. So I think, yeah, we need to kind of see those things growing together. And for us in the UK, that really centers on kind of governmental and institutional support for the art sector, so that people can continue to pay filmmakers for the incredible work that they make, so that audiences can go and view it. So yeah, that's kind of what I see about as the kind of business side of it all. But yeah, like Sheila said, we're an audience, like, you know, every year we see that there is an audience for these films. So it's just my hope that, yeah, that it kind of gets cemented into the kind of zeitgeist of film exhibition in the UK, and that we don't keep having to like make a case for it every year. We can just think about where exciting new avenues we can go, instead of having to kind of draft for the funding every year and kind of prove that what we're doing is worth it. So
absolutely. Thanks, Carmen. Estrella?
Just to build on what Sheila and Carmen were saying, I think that, again, we have to think about how policies are only trying to catch up right now with what smaller organizations like us are doing. So if we speak about an industry, we need to speak about a scope, and to what extent are we then small. And you were mentioning, Carmen, screening fees. And I think that the screening fees that we do in our festivals are just short-term effects or impact, let's say. But and that's a starting point for sure, to respect the work and to pay for the work that is created by someone else. But at the same time, there's a much longer term effect and impact of our festivals, precisely thanks to that connection, precisely thanks to that sense of collaboration, and precisely thanks to that audience that is built and that remembers and that keeps engaging with the cinemas.
Absolutely. So Fadil, how's it going there? Have you warmed up a little bit?
Much better. This Maasai sugar is really, really helping me. Yeah, I feel a bit awake and warm, put it that way. Yeah, I think a lot has been said. A lot has been said already. I think there's not much to add. For me, definitely the screening fees we pay, it's a small part, it's a small contribution, but certainly helps to run the business. We are on the exhibition side of the industry, so we're not making films, but we're there to sell, I guess, to some extent, products that have been made by the filmmakers themselves. And for me, I can definitely see huge changes that are happening currently within the UK, maybe globally to some extent. And this is almost like the post-BLM movement, if I may say that. There's a whole conversation about diversity and inclusion. There's a whole conversation, especially within arts and culture, to really diversify and decolonize the sector. There's all kind of this terminology being thrown around. But for me, it's definitely a time and period where I guess people, if I may say people of color or ethnic minorities altogether, they're asking questions in many ways, asking questions to policymakers, to institutions, and especially to do with film, for example, wanting films that depict or shows the characters that they're familiar with, the people that they know. So, and also challenging those stereotypes and elements of tokenism that comes with a lot of films that we've seen in the past as well. So I guess to some extent what I'm trying to say is there's a supply-demand element within it. The demand is increasing, so therefore we are hoping that the supply will also increase in turn, and platforms like Netflix and other big organizations that have been involved with the sector will continue to show the films, and therefore the business element of African cinema will grow, will expand. And us as small players, as exhibitionists or people who are exhibiting African films, will also have a role to play within that, because we are the ones reaching out to small communities, to small audiences that the likes of Netflix might not be able to reach, and we bring something different as well. But yeah, just to add to everything that's been said.
Well, thank you so very much. This was such a rich conversation. I wish you all the very, very best as you continue with the amazing work that you are doing. And especially for us sitting in South Africa and on the continent, it's wonderful to know that you are out there making sure that our content is being shown to everybody in your space, but beyond that. So wish you all the luck. Thank you so much. Thanks for being on the Tropics Show with us and the F Show. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for having us.